Hi, everybody. It's Adam. Just wanted to say thank you guys for downloading this episode. I know it's a little bit late. The reason for that is obviously, if you listened to the last week's podcast, you know, this is the debut of Preacher Podcast, our new spin-off show. And if you haven't downloaded that episode, please go ahead and do that. This is going to be the same episode, so we just want to let you know ahead of time before the show gets going proper, is that there's a little bit of language in this. It's not a lot. PG-13. I think we may drop one F-bomb, just so you know. We don't want anybody, playing this because, we're pretty exclusively clean tags on the iTunes and everything there. So just want to let you know that there may be a little bit of language, coming up. So just prepare yourself if that's, something that might offend you. Maybe you want to skip on over this, or if you know anything about Preacher and it might offend your sensibilities, hey, don't listen to this. But it is a brand new show. We started out, we've debuted really, really well on iTunes. We're super, super pleased with that. And we'd encourage you guys to go over and, just download on iTunes, drop us 5-star reviews, a.k.a. humdingers. There's no Sean here to do the thing. But we'd really appreciate that. That's just going to help get this show out better and to more people and everything, and we're really super excited about it. It's a blast to do and everything. It's just me, it's Bruce, it's Sean, it's Matt from the Film Find. We're all together reviewing this great show. So sit back, take a listen and everything. Hope you guys enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, why don't you go over there, subscribe on the iTunes, give us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it and help us kind of get that show going off on the right legs. So thank you guys so much and enjoy the show.
It was the time of the preacher when the story began of the choice of a lady and the love of a man. I loved her so dearly.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to discuss this program called Preacher. I am your host, Adam Portrais. Welcome to the Preacher Podcast, and I'm joined, as always, by Sean Keenan.
Hottie thinks it's going to start with a whistle, kind of like a bunny in a bear trap. And you'll know when you hear it, because you're the one who's going to be making it.
Ooh. Matt Smith.
I'm a prickly pear, and I'm not Bruce Leslie.
Oh, no.
Oh, we are getting deep already. I love it. And Bruce Leslie, of course.
Matt, by the time I'm through with you, boy, you're going to wish your daddy had pulled out. We're going to put an explicit warning at the front, right?
Exactly. So, yes, welcome everybody to the first official episode of Preacher Podcast. We're here to talk about Preacher, the new show on AMC, and of course, how it relates back to the comics that it's based on and everything. We're here to have a fun time. We're an offshoot, real quick, just of the Film Find and Hear Movie Podcast, but we're here to bring you a new show maybe not every single week, because they skip this next week coming up, but as soon as the new Preacher episode comes out that following Tuesday, we're going to be right here talking about it, breaking it down from people who are fans of the comics, who are fans of just genre television in general, and we're gonna have a fun time. So thanks for downloading the episode, and let's get into it, guys.
Tell us about New York, guys.
Well, I'm sorry, you broke up.
I said, tell us about New York, man. 2 of us got to go to New York, while 2 of us had to stay home and get none.
Yeah, I had no New York.
No New York was gotten. But Sean and I actually we got this show itself actually got a invite to the Preacher premiere up in New York City last week, and Sean and I flew on up, and we attended the exclusive premiere there with Seth Rogen. Then you had half the cast.
It was Dominic Cooper, Joseph Gilgan, Ruth Negga,
Sam Caitlin
was there. Sam Caitlin was there, and Garth Ennis.
The man Garth Ennis himself was there. So,
and they were very forthcoming with information, which you generally don't get in those Q&As.
They're usually just kind of like patty, sort of like, "Oh, I enjoyed doing the show. We had a fun time." Blah blah blah.
And I wonder, I really do wonder if Seth Rogen had something to do with that, because he really set the bar of what they could and couldn't speak about early on. Mm-hmm. And so, when you ask them a question like early on, they answered both my questions, because I asked them if the Zippo lighter was going to make an appearance, and they said yes. Yeah. They said that it is going to show up.
That's
and they
cool.
also they spoke about the Saint of Killers, saying yes, he's going to show up too. And so, it's just it was a very fun night, and everybody in the crowd was in it for Preacher. Like, everybody wanted to be there. It wasn't one of those things where, like, hey, do you have nothing to do? Why don't you show up and watch this thing that AMC is putting together? So everybody was totally on board for Preacher, and it was just a really fun experience watching this for the first time around like-minded people. And it was, the venue was lovely. Adam had problems with the audio because Adam always has problems with the audio.
You could just
what was the over-under? I predicted that. I was trying to take bets on that.
But it was really, but it was a very good time, and it felt special, to be there. And thank you, AMC, for inviting us to it. It was very fun.
Yeah, we had a blast. You get to walk around the city all day, then going in and seeing this awesome thing of and the energy in the room was really palpable. From these are you could tell everyone there was pretty hardcore into this stuff. It didn't seem like, oh, well, here's just, random dude number 4. People are like, I know the books. I can't wait for this to happen. It was pretty sweet.
And now, Bruce, you'd be very, very happy with me because I actually got our plug in on the show.
Perfect.
Because you had to write your questions on cue cards because they've learned over time, don't leave open mics in front of a bunch of nerds. You're just going to ask stupid questions.
And here's the thing. Of all the questions that they asked and everything, I'm sure every one of them was like, Seth, will you smoke weed with me? Seth, will you smoke weed with me? Seth, will you smoke weed with me? We can't do any of these. And that would have been all what it would have been had they had an open mic. So it was smart of them to have us write it down.
Right. And so, I had my question, and then I said, Sean from the Preacher Podcast. And they actually said, oh, and this question was written by Sean from the Preacher Podcast, and the dude from Vulture was like, so that's a thing, and everybody started laughing, which seemed to rankle Adam a little bit.
It did, just a tiny bit.
Got under your skin, man. You're so hard to offend.
It was, but
it was just funsies.
No, but it was just there's it's.
Well, I get it though, because at the end of the day, that dude's at Vulture.
Yeah, he was a Vulture, and he's a knowledgeable guy. I'll give him this much.
He knew his stuff.
He knew what he was talking about, because a lot of these people that they send to this, just go to this junket interview Seth Rogen. It's
oh, for sure,
in person that would never know anything. This guy knew what he was talking about, so I was very pleased with that. So
good. I take it back.
It's the same moderator too. It's usually the same moderator that they have at the big panels in San Diego. Also, it's the same guy. That guy does the research and does the work, and he's basically the best guy that they've got, and they know it.
Yeah,
and he did a fantastic job moderating.
No, it was a good time, and go ahead.
I'm not a shabby moderator. If they want me to do it next year,
yeah, I know. I keep telling people that. I'm like, he does it all the time. Other conventions. Why can't he do it here?
Yeah, I'm sending my resume to San Diego. I want to do the
it.
Vampire Diaries panel. Because I love that.
And Bruce is a big Vampire Diary fan. We didn't talk about
Actually, I'm more into the originals, but I'll go with the Vampire Diaries.
Hey, so yeah, we got to see that, and it was a fun time, and it was interesting to be in the Q&A and then listen to some of the things, and we'll get to them. That Seth Rogen said that were inspiring to him about this, and really watching it again and going, whoa, I can't believe that I didn't see these things, but they're glaringly obvious when you see them again, and we'll talk about those as they come up.
Yeah, as they come up tonight. One of the things too, because Garth Ennis was there at the panel, and one of the neat things that he said was, he goes, I basically told him, sorry boys, clean up my mess. And, he was full in, and he is a very big fan of the show as well, clearly. And,
that is so good to know. So good to know.
And quite frankly, he should be. They did it. They really have done a very good job conveying the themes of the book, if not word for word what was written. And quite frankly, we've seen what that looks like before when you're too faithful to the books, and it's not great sometimes. So,
are you talking about Watchmen?
Yes, I am.
I was thinking about season 2 of Walking Dead, where they just spend forever at that farm. But okay, sure.
They were very faithful to that issue for a season.
Yeah, that one issue. That whole season.
78 issue run where they're like, gee whiz, they really got to get off this farm. This is ridiculous.
We got to get our money's worth out of this farm.
What can I say, man? I like drawing trees and barns. What can
That's okay,
because there
because
certainly aren't enough of them in North Georgia for them to shoot at. That's for sure.
That's true.
Show.
The whole season 2 of Preacher is going to be in that hotel room in New York. So get prepared.
Watch out now. So here's kind of I don't want to say we usually do it IMDb, but IMDb doesn't do it per episode. But this is off of AMC's website here, and let's get into the episode itself. Its logline is this. Jesse tries to be a quote-unquote good preacher, unsure that a mysterious duo is after him. Meanwhile, we meet an enigmatic cowboy. I think that's a really interesting way to say the end of that. But
okay.
Well, they're trying to keep it as open-ended as possible because the plot is going to go everywhere, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the spoiler-filled episode plot summary here.
Yes. Okay. So let's just go ahead and say this now, just for new folks that are out there. Chances are, if you downloaded this, you probably saw the episode, but just a little precursor. We're going to be spoiling the heck out of this. So just fair warning up top. So
Please.
Just take it now.
Are you ready for the summary?
Bruce, give us a little spoilerific, if you will.
Okay, well, a mysterious entity flies around the solar system like a comet until it arrives in Africa to a devout local reverend. After absorbing its power and commanding that his congregation be quiet, the preacher explodes in a fountain of blood and guts. Next, we go to Annville, Texas, where local preacher Jesse Custer is feeling a lack of enthusiasm for his job. He has a young parishioner ask him to hurt his father, who's abusive to his mother, and he's feeling competition from a nearby megachurch with a Starbucks in the lobby. The town experiences a violent protest due to the high school changing its mascot from the Savages to the Prairie Dogs, and the preacher is continually harassed by a needy member of his flock who's constantly berated by a senior citizen mother via telephone. We meet Irish vampire Cassidy, who is attacked on a plane, killing all on board, including the pilot, and he jumps without a parachute from 30,000 feet in the air. The Irish bloodsucker lands in Annville and promptly eats a cow. A lady from Jesse's past, Tulip, has returned to town after fighting some violent men presumed to be criminals, killing one of them with an ear of corn, and shooting down their helicopter with a homemade bazooka. We discover that Jesse is the Annville preacher because he's following in his father's footsteps, a father who was mysteriously murdered while a young Jesse looked on. Jesse visits the abused wife at her place of work in Keenan Meats, where she confesses that she becomes aroused when her husband hurts her. As all this is happening, we get glimpses of the entity from the beginning of the episode, causing religious leaders around the world to explode, including Tom Cruise at the Church of Scientology. Jesse talks to Tulip in her car, where she tries to tempt him back into his old life of crime, and Jesse finds a severed ear that Tulip insists is a piece of shawarma. Jesse and Cassidy meet one another in a local bar, and the abusive husband and Civil War reenactor confronts Jesse, and a fight ensues in which the bad dad emits a high-pitched sound like a rabbit stuck in a bear trap. Jesse and Cassidy are taken to jail by local lawman Sheriff Root, where the preacher and the undead rebel rouser bond. Jesse decides to quit the ministry, but as he's investigating a mysterious disturbance at his church, the entity that has obliterated so many men of the cloth bonds with Jesse, and he survives the ordeal, though he seems to lose consciousness for 3 days. Jesse awakens on Sunday morning just in time for church, where he announces that he has changed his mind about quitting and will remain as Annville's preacher. Jesse gives the whiny parishioner with mommy issues advice that the parishioner follows a little too literally, and the episode ends as two mysterious individuals track the entity to Annville. Did I miss anything?
I think that's a pretty darn good summation.
You nailed it, Bruce.
So the thing with this is I like how, the Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg have said, hey, we're going to go out, we're going to do things differently than what's in the book and everything. And as we see with the book and everything, you really much start out, well after all of this kind of stuff has taken place.
Right.
And so I like how we're going back, because that was always my thought when initially hearing about like, oh, we're going to do this as a show. I thought you got to have this build up, because if you start out like that book going 100 miles an hour, you're going to make a lot of people weird.
Well, here's and because this is one of the bits that we're going to be doing on Preacher Podcast is the 3 big questions of each episode, which you have dovetailed quite nicely into my first question, which is, are there any changes from the book to the show that don't make any sense to you at all as to why they made those changes on the show?
Everything seems to be fairly organic as far as I can tell, and it feels like an odd prequel to the books.
The two things that confused me the most, or not really confused me, the two things I was most concerned about before I saw the episode. Number one, I was afraid they were going to try to take Genesis out of the whole equation, which I could see somebody trying to do that to make it a little bit more down to earth, a little bit more real world. And I was also worried that Cassidy was not going to be a vampire. So they allayed my fears very, very early on about Genesis and not too much later about Cassidy. I think if I were going to say there were any changes that absolutely didn't make sense, I liked Jesse's dad a little bit better as a war veteran than as a preacher himself, but I'm sure as the new mythos of the series unfolds, we'll understand that a little bit better.
And that was one thing that I thought was interesting while watching it, because we hadn't really known up until, you actually see the episode that it does take place in modern day. Right. So
I was so hoping for it to be set in like 96, 97, but you know what? I'm going to go with it. We
wanted to hear a lot of Spice Girls music. We understand.
I just wanted the Kurt Cobain connection to hold true.
One thing that kind of concerned me a little bit, that I didn't quite understand why they changed it as much as they did, which is the two guys, right, that are searching for Genesis. Why are they playing that up as some mystery?
Well, because
I mean, look, I get it.
Yeah.
We're going to be a while until we get to the big events of this series, it feels like.
But I do have a theory on that, Matt. Even in the comics, the Grail unfolds slowly. And I think they may be sort of combining DeBlanco and Fiore. Those two guys are credited as DeBlanco and Fiore, the Adephai, the angels that were at the left hand of God in heaven before he deserted. I think that they may be sort of combining their role with Hair Star's role. So I think that maybe we're going to find out that they work for the Grell, but they're still DeBlanco and Fiore in terms of some other aspects of the character. So that's my suspicion, but who knows?
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't hate it. I was just curious about it because one of the things I really like about the opening of the comic book that doesn't. That they have in this, right, where they show Genesis leaving and like tearing ass through the heavens, right?
Now Bruce, I mean, just real quick here, Matt. I hate to interrupt, but Bruce, just for like new listeners who may never have read the book or anything, give us a little synopsis here on Genesis, just so people kind of know what we might. Show anything they've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to dwell into comic book spoilers here, but
lightish.
I'll say that Genesis is a new creation in heaven that scares God so bad that the day Genesis is created, God abandons heaven. They try to imprison Genesis, but Genesis is too powerful. Genesis has all kinds of power but doesn't have a soul, so it wants to bond with somebody, and it bonds to Jesse, giving him the word of God or the voice of God. It's been referred to as both, but that ability to tell people what to do, and if they understand what he says, they have to do it.
Right.
Is that a good
the
summary?
Horrifying effect in this house.
Yeah, and
this isn't one of the big questions, 3 big questions of the episode. But now that Tom Cruise is dead in the world of Preacher, do they continue making Mission Impossible movies in Preacher?
They try with Jeremy Renner, but it doesn't really go as well as they want to, and then they get back like probably CGI.
Here's
Why
my
do they
theory.
keep pushing Jeremy Renner on us?
I don't know.
My theory is
he's a tough guy, but he's a Hawkeye. He's not a Captain America.
Agreed.
In season 3, when God finally makes an appearance, Tom Cruise. That's who you cast.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up, Bruce, because at the panel,
This is good.
At the panel, they're asking Seth Rogen because you directed the pilot, you co-wrote the pilot,
Executive producer.
you're executive producer of the show. Do you have plans on acting in the show? And he said, "Well, I think that season 1, no, but if there is a season 2 of the show, there are a couple of characters that I'm thinking about that I would make sense for." And John Gilgan, the guy who plays Cassidy, he goes, "If you're God, I quit. If you play God on this show, I quit." It was really funny, man.
What if he played the last living vessel of the blood of Christ?
Oh man, that is good.
We talked about it in episode 0. I really wanted Jamie Kennedy for that role, but I would go with Seth Rogen.
Jamie Kennedy.
I do wonder if that's
Kennedy's free.
if that's too much screen time.
Maybe he could play like the father of the final, because he lives in that sort of monkey cage and then he kills himself when the baby's born. Maybe he could play that role. All he has to do is throw poo on Hair Star that way.
So, no,
I've got the perfect role. Sorry to keep this hijacked here, but Seth Rogen should play, what's his name? Bobby, the sexual investigator that that gets a hold of Airstar.
That's good.
That would be the perfect role because it's small. It'd be confined to one part of one episode, and it would be outrageous.
Okay, so here's the second big question of episode 1. So, series is set in Annville, Texas, which is not an actual town.
Right.
If it took place in a real location, would it change anything about the show?
Oh man, I think it would. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Now, it would change things in a couple of ways. I mean, the hardcore fans of the comic might be a little upset that they didn't call it Annville, but they move on to real locations in the comic, so maybe we will have real locations up ahead. And then I think there's pressure from actual people picketing outside of churches in that town if it happens. I think it's a little pain in the butt that the producers would have to deal with. It's just not worth it to them.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have to deal with that. And here's the thing. I mean, and there's so many other comparisons that I think people may the Waco thing or something. Like, there'll be some weird stuff that people will automatically just start thinking. And, less distractions that you can, the better.
Mm-hmm. So you think that Preacher might actually have a crossover with Friday Night Lights at some point is what I'm hearing.
I mean, that's...
Oh, man, I could see the Prairie Dogs and the Panthers playing in the state championship.
Absolutely.
Just give me some Booby Miles and I'll be happy.
All right, so here's the third big question of the episode. So we know Santa Killers is coming. We know that they're going to have the Zippo lighter. Are we going to see John Wayne?
That is a question I had if you didn't bring it up because
I'm going to say no. Hard no.
Are we going to see the Duke? Are we going to see like a thinly veiled John Wayne?
Oh, there you go. That's exactly where
because even in the comic, it's mostly he's never referred to as actually John Wayne when he's in the panel. There are some issues about using a likeness and things. So they talk about John Wayne, but whenever he does appear, he's the big guy. He's the Duke. He's the cowboy. He's that guy who his first name is John, and he used to be named Marion, and he was in a bunch of movies, but it's totally not John Wayne for legal purposes.
Anybody.
So, Matt, why do you think that we're not going to?
I think it's all studios are really scared of likeness rights, probably more so than comic book publishers would be. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it'll happen. Do I think that we'll get that character as someone else? Very possibly. I'd like to see another Western icon just go on and pop up in there.
Yeah, like Sam Shepard.
Roy Rogers.
Yeah, Sam Shepard.
I think we're more likely to get somebody who's still alive because then they can sign the contract for the rights to use their likeness. But you have to, Clint Eastwood is who inspired the Saint of Killers. So I don't know if it would be too much to have John Wayne's character replaced with Clint Eastwood, but he'd be a good choice.
Well, I don't know if you could go that far, but it'd be nice to have maybe a Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp kind of thing.
Ooh, that's a good one. Man.
Oh, that would work. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
like a public domain lawman
to do kind of some of this stuff too. Kurt Russell would be I think if you asked him nicely, he might.
Yeah, I think it's possible, right? Especially if it's just popping in for a scene here and there. They might have to pay him out of the ass, but
yeah,
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's totally worth it. It's Kurt Russell, for God's sake.
Yeah. Yeah, instant.
Got Jeffrey Dean Morgan up in The Walking Dead, so you never know.
Right.
Maybe they could get Jeffrey Dean Morgan in this too. They teeter-totter those seasons just right.
Well, he can come over and play Negan over here as the inspiration for custom.
Nope, Thomas Wayne, John Wayne's older brother.
Quality.
Oh my Lord.
Where are we going from here?
All right. Was that the third question?
The third one?
That was the third question.
Oh, I've got a bonus one.
Oh, okay, let's hear it.
Question.
Everybody, hold your tight for the bonus.
That's right. This is the bonus. This is the bonus third question.
These points count for double.
So, look, it kind of disguises itself at first, but this quite possibly is the toughest tough guy show on TV. Correct?
It's definitely the bloodiest, man. This is for violence, man. It goes NC-17 territory with exploding bodies and some of the other stuff we see.
Yeah,
jump, man. And the toughest tough guy lines around on the show. I mean, this really has the potential to be one of those shows where, the nerds pick up on it first and then it just catches on like wildfire and we end up hating the people who love the show.
Yeah.
And outside of a channel that you have to like pay for, HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, Stars, I don't know what else is out there, but you catch my drift. Outside of one of those premium cable channels, have you ever seen a broken bone pop through skin before on screen?
I have not. That was the first time I've ever seen that.
I mean, that stuff does pop up occasionally. Like there are scenes on Walking Dead that are comparable, right? It's not maybe the same thing, but it's comparable.
Right.
I think that AMC can go for a lot more than they let on. Like the big secret about basic cable, right, like these sort of premium cable networks that are not subscription.
First tier up.
is that they can really do whatever they want because they're not fully subject to FCC regulations.
Mm-hmm. But they have advertisers.
But they have advertisers. So at a certain point, it's just what are the advertisers willing to allow them to do and still be associated with the show? And I think that that an advertiser who's on this show and is familiar enough with what AMC is doing in that time slot with the 2 Walking Dead series is probably willing to put up with a lot because those audiences show up. And if this show can get really big, who knows how far they're going to be willing to go.
Jell-O, brought to you by...
Yeah.
Now,
some pudding pop commercials.
Getting into a couple of the details of the show here, and I'm real curious to hear what all three of you have to say. But I didn't watch any of the preview. They put out like the first 5 minutes or first 4 minutes, and I didn't watch that. I waited to see it all when it aired on AMC.
Yeah, same here.
And then I guess Sean, you and Adam saw it before they released that 4 minutes. So I want to know what everybody's thought was when that whole intro sequence in Africa happens. The way they throw the preacher title card up there, just like something from almost like from a 70s horror movie or something.
Yeah. I thought this, like when you first see the graphics and everything, I'm sitting there in the seat, I'm like, here we go, here's the thing. And it looks like a Beastie Boys video.
You're talking about space.
Space, yeah.
Yeah.
Space.
Outer Space looks like a Beastie Boys video, and I'm just like, I like it, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel weird because maybe doing the podcast or something, because I'm like, how is everyone else what are they gonna think about this? Is this gonna be like, is this gonna turn people off?
You know what it is to me, that very opening is it's a very clever way of hiding the budget.
Oh yeah.
Man.
And they do a very good job of hiding it again by like heightening that fight scene in the car when it's going through the cornfield.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, like that process shot looks great.
It's for process shots. I mean, you can still kind of tell it's one, but
You can tell it's there, but like they're directing your attention away from it so much
Yes.
that it kind of just blurs by as it's supposed to do. I think they're being very smart about what they're able to throw money at.
Or think about the helicopter. She takes down the
right.
helicopter. You don't see the helicopter.
Yeah, the kids go down in the root cellar. That's exactly like how you would do it in a high school play or something.
Yeah,
storytelling. I love it.
But
good.
Before
it's
we even
exactly like that scene in Fury Road when Mad Max runs off and then he just comes back covered in blood after a giant explosion, right? And you don't see anything happen.
Now, still on the intro, though, when we have Genesis flying around the cosmos there and the noise that Genesis is emitting, did you guys recognize that sound at all?
It's like a crying baby.
That's what.
Well, no, not just that, but like the whoosh, 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 that noise.
Wait, how does it go?
Yeah, explain that.
It's an ultrasound, man. So they're keeping with that infantile sort of imagery there.
Think about it.
But yeah, that's absolutely an ultrasound, that the noise as it flies through, and then when it shows up again later to Jesse, you hear that ultrasound and the baby crying. And I wondered, are they even going to show us the little baby face in the middle of it like they do in the comics? Which they didn't do that, and I can understand. But when it goes to the preacher in Africa. At first, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I'm not sure where this is going. And then before I had much time to think about it, I knew where it was going. And that was all over his parishioners, man. The guy exploded, guts and all. And I loved that. And that was like, this is starting like some kind of horror movie. And then they throw up that preacher title card that looks like it should be from something like I Spit on Your Grave or something, just the way it goes up and the noise around it.
It's very, like, the title there was very, very Sam Raimi to me.
Yeah.
It was just like, it just right on there.
Well, it's also like I really like the way they use the font style in this, where it's just like dead center in the screen, right? Like, and it's giant. It covers up everything. Mm-hmm. And the title card just works in that moment, I think, to set you up for exactly what you're getting into a little bit.
The editing in the pilot episode is also great, where they cut from the priest throwing gut all over everybody in the front rows to preacher taking the ketchup and like whacking the ketchup bottle so the ketchup.
That was when Cassidy fell to earth.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But after the priest, we go see Jesse and I don't know. Do you call that a marquee? What do you call it when it's out in front of a church? The church bulletin board out front where the give your heart and soul to Jesus has been cleverly rearranged by the neighborhood kids. I love that, and it just kind of shows us the opposite ends of the world. But we get to have a little more fun, I guess.
The real hit on that though is like the end of the sermon, where it just goes, "If you guys can really just stop messing around with the sign that's outside," and how the organ hits before he's even done. It's beautiful.
I gotta tell you that at the beginning of the show, and I think that we talked about this on Thursday, Adam, is that I had a hard time at first with Dominic Cooper as preacher because something was off about the character, and it was in the character itself. It's that Dominic Cooper himself was doing it as the. Let me start over. The character is the one who is having an issue, not the actor.
Right.
Because the character is clearly not comfortable where he is.
Exactly. When you see, and I got that more the second time that I watched it, because it did seem odd the first time, but you're right. It was the character being able to get up there and do his sermon and everything.
Right.
And really is having a hard time getting it out the way that he knows he should.
Right.
It's not the actor having the problem. It's the character
Precisely.
himself. Mm-hmm. So it's uncomfortable to watch. And so I'm like, why is Dominic Cooper struggling right now? Because that guy is awesome all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking of him on Agent Carter when he's running around and he's like, we're going to have a real humdinger of a time here. It's going to be fantastic. Fantastic.
And not for one moment, not for 1 second did I see Howard Stark when I was watching him either. So that's pretty good, because those are very different characters. And I was worried at times I would see just a little Howard Stark there and that would be jarring, but not for a second did I see that. But
he played Uday Hussein also. I don't see.
I didn't watch that movie. I've only seen like 7 of the 8 Saddam Hussein's sons movies, and that's the one I missed. But anyway,
I thought you were about to say I've only
missed the good one.
But also, Ben,
I've only seen 6 movies, period. So give me a break.
and I was a little concerned too, because Jesse Custer's like 6'2", in my mind. I picture the big strapping Custer, and Dominic,
he's a big Texan.
Yeah, Dominic Cooper, he's got the cowboy boots on that get him up to about 5'6", 5'7", probably. But man, he won me over by the end of the episode, because I thought, when this guy finally has to be tough, am I going to buy it? And I bought it.
Yeah, when you get to the one of the biggest changes here, which is him handling himself in that bar fight.
Right.
Right? That's when it delivers and finally clicks. You're like, okay.
And I mean,
this is right.
In that scene there was a superhero moment itself.
Man, when they do the slow down and they pan right on and they just close up to his face and he's smiling.
Oh, so good. Oh.
And let's go ahead and talk about Cassidy's fight in the airplane, because when Cassidy's in the jet, I'm watching it and I say, okay, here's Cassidy, but he doesn't have his sunglasses on. He's working on this jet. He's Irish, but I'm still not sure if he's going to be a vampire or not in this TV show. And then he looks out and he notices the sun, talks about flying into the sun. And then I just start rubbing my grubby little hands together, because I know we're going to get the vampire Cassidy. And
what I felt like, though, is how he goes back to use the bathroom and everything, and he gets the air freshener out, squirting it around and everything, and sees the Bible and just goes, what's this? Opens it up, and we don't get a big explanation.
No, but it's lots and lots of notes. Yeah. Like somebody has spent many mornings at Starbucks on their Bible study.
Crazy, just insane.
I just thought they were really constipated, and that's the only book they had.
Yes.
Oh, this stuff is good. Oh, that stuff is good. Wrath is awesome. But
cast that demon out of my soul and into that bowl. But anyway, so the fight scene on the jet plane, that's our first major fight scene, right? We see that before we see Tulip's fight. And I'll tell you, when I saw that, I was impressed. They bookend it with that awesome fight in the bar there at the end, and the choreography here and the way it's shot. And this is like really, really, really good combat cinematography and choreography. I mean, this could be right up there with a show that's all about fighting, like that Into the Badlands or something, as far as how well it's choreographed and shot. And, dare I be blasphemous on this show, but some of it was on par to me, and it was smaller doses, but on par with Kingsman, which is like the highest praise I can give a fight scene.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is definitely into the Badlands level, which is impressive in and of itself.
Particularly since the show isn't built around the whole idea that these are martial artists or something. And Cassidy just goes nuts on those guys and then grabs his little umbrella, making him look a bit more English than Irish as he jumps out of the airplane. And I still can't quite figure out what the umbrella did for him, but at least he had it. It was a little chuckle.
Well, nothing. That's why I threw it away because it didn't open and stop him from like splattering.
Well, I thought the idea he was going to use it like a parasol to keep the sun off of him is what I thought. And then when he lands and he's in the sun, he just throws it away because it's all shredded.
Yeah, that's probably partially true, but
column B.
And what do you guys think? It's Joseph Gilgun. That's his name. Gilgun. Gilgan, like Gilgan's Island.
Gilgan's Island.
John Gilligan's Island. I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
Now, what do you guys think about him as Cassidy? Because one thing I will say, knowing Cassidy from the comics intimately, I made a big mistake. I read about 40 issues of Preacher this weekend before I watched this, like in a row, nonstop. And that really set me in the comic book mode and mindset, and maybe didn't make it as easy for me to just absorb it as if I were a newcomer, like I would have liked to. But, the way I feel about Cassidy in the comics, he's irredeemable to me. But then I suddenly like him again because this guy's charismatic, and now I can see how I'm going to get roped in and then have my heart broken by the guy potentially. So
let me tell you, Bruce. Let me tell you what John Gilgan himself said at the Q&A panel. Is that he said that he read the script for this. He hadn't read Preacher before, so he picked it up, and about 4 or 5 issues in, he went, "I can't believe they wrote a comic book with me in it already."
What kind of idiot is he, man?
Honest to God, you changed the accent. It's the carrot. He is that guy, man.
He's the exact same dude. The only he did say, he goes, the only difference is the vampire bits, but everything else is basically the same.
And I felt like that was going to be the biggest challenge to cast because Jesse and Tulip are kind of hero and heroine archetypes, so you can play around with that casting a little bit, but Arseface is all about the prosthetics and the makeup. But when it comes to Cassidy, man, he's such a specific person that it would be hard to find a person in the real world that could pull it off. And, this guy's hair isn't quite right, and he takes his sunglasses off a little too much. But I was pleasantly surprised. This is another area where I was expecting disappointment, and thankfully it didn't happen.
Well, did anybody here ever watch the BBC show Misfits?
I've seen like an episode or two.
Yeah, I've seen some of it. He's good in that.
He's the same dude.
Does he play Glenn Danzig?
He's multiple man.
He's not Glenn Danzig.
He's basically multiple man on that
okay.
And when I first saw it, you never, first of all, I never thought there would be a Preacher TV show. Never mind stunt casting for Cassidy. But there was something about him immediately where you were like, oh, because they in the first season of Misfits, like the big breakout character, the big breakout actor took off because he was too good for the show, and so he went to do movies, and he's replaced by John Gilgan's character.
Cool.
John Gilgan is awesome. Is awesome on that show and immediately stood out. So I think that is probably what's going to happen with this show here.
Yeah, he is also, I want to say, one of the few good things about Lockout, the movie, that no one gives a crap about other than other than John Carpenter won a lawsuit over it.
Now, by any chance,
he's great in that thing.
Is Sylvester Stallone in Lockout?
No.
Then I haven't seen it.
Don't care.
Now, the character and the casting choice that got the most, and I would dare say the most ridiculous amount of conversation online was Ruth Negga as Tulip. And I want to say that she is the strongest character in terms of the traits of the character. I mean, her performance is great too, but in terms of the traits of the character, I really, really like the change-ups that they've given Tulip in this first episode. Very different from the comics, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, 1-for-1 themed exactly the same. I completely agree with you, Bruce.
And she owns every second that she's on that screen too. She's just got something about her. You look at her, it's like you just can't take your eyes off of what she's doing. And she's got a.
Are you talking about when she got out of the shower there with her uncle laying on the couch?
But it goes through and like you can't stop watching what she's doing, and there's just such a glint of fun in her eyes.
Yes,
and while she's doing it, it just makes everything all that much better.
And this sounds like a joke. Oh, I'm sorry. This sounds like a joke, but I'm absolutely serious. She was pretty darn good as the porcupine lady in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'm not being facetious.
That's what I was about to say. So as soon as they made that announcement, right? Like I know her from not only Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but she was also in a couple of what's his name? Neil
Gaiman?
No, he's an Irish director.
Oh, don't know him.
He made The Crying Game. Neil Jordan. She's been in a few of his movies, and I've quite liked her over the years. So as soon as they made that announcement, I was like, oh, that's a really smart choice because she is quite the actress. And, I mean, she has a pedigree behind her.
Between her and Dominic Cooper, she does the better Texas accent.
Are you saying that Ruth Negga is actually a dude?
What?
No.
If that's the case, guys, I got to go see a therapist.
No.
See you in a bit.
It's not.
She has no bathroom problems in your hometown there.
Kidding.
Oh, Charlotte.
But no, I like her entrance into this thing. It is like you couldn't get more of a badass intro to somebody and just going, hey, what's this character about?
She killed a man with a corn cob. What more do you need to say?
Pretty great. Made a bazooka with coffee cans.
And I love how
the kids' reactions where they're just like, oh, that was the most awesome thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
And I love the little girl. My mommy's dead. My dad's at work. I'm 10 years old. I'm in charge. And the way she looks and said, I bet you are, sweetie, or honey, or something like that. And then it's off to the arts and crafts. As she's standing there in her bra talking to the kids.
Here's a cool thing, and I really started to notice this the second time around after the Q&A, where so Seth Rogen said basically he kind of made a big giant list of like, hey, we want to bring all of this stuff to this show. We want to have it, like Tarantino style. We want to have like Coen Brothers style. We want, this action stuff. We want drama stuff. We want the horror stuff. We want to bring everything all into one. And I really started to see it the second time around, and especially in this scene when, she eyeballs all the stuff and goes, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing. I know what we're going to do with all this stuff. I mean, you really are starting to see all the influences that he was talking about. And like, it didn't hit me the first time.
And thankfully he had like 15 milk jugs filled with moonshine. That came in handy.
Yeah, he's just,
what's really weird about that comment of wanting to bring all of those things into the fold when making this series is just like, you describe all of those things combined. And all I think is like, yeah, that sounds like a Garth Ennis comic.
Sure. Exactly, man.
Right? Like, and don't forget that it's like you're not bringing all of that stuff to it. Like Garth Ennis brought all that.
And
it's
don't forget about all the comedy that's in the Preacher comics. I mean, there is a ton of comedy there, and that's one aspect where I'd say the television show maybe executes just a little bit better than the comic does sometimes with the comedy. And I was kind of worried maybe the comedy would dominate the tone, but it absolutely doesn't. It seems very appropriate to me because something this absurd, this macabre, this disgusting, you're going to need your comedic relief.
I mean, if people thought that this first episode was really dark and really violent, like, Jesus, they're in for it.
And I thought it was going to be Pineapple Express with God in it.
So great.
Exactly. There's no other way. Now, what about Arseface, guys? Tell me your thoughts on Arseface. Was he disfigured enough? Was his voice too easy to understand for you guys?
I think that they made too big of a deal of that. I think that I think that people watching the show made too big a deal of that. I think that the producers, I think everybody on the show is making too big of a deal out of it, and here's why. Arseface is barely in the comic book.
Oh, but when he's in it, it's awesome.
It is indeed, and when he shows up later because he's so good-hearted, if they use him kind of the way that that Heroes uses the Japanese guy who's the time shifter, Hero. Mm-hmm. If they use him to that level, the show is going to succeed. But if they keep shoehorning him in where he doesn't belong,
right?
it's good. I think things are going to live and die by that.
Yeah, I feel like he already knows Jesse too well for him to be the same character he is in the comics, but that doesn't mean he can't be great. But, one thing I'm going to say about this guy, another guy, Ian Coletti, I knew nothing about him. I'd never seen him before that I'm aware of. And this guy, I think they could have been a little more gruesome with the makeup and the prosthetics, but this guy is the perfect guy to be playing this part because the enthusiasm that's bouncing like in his shoulders and in his arms, because you're not going to be able to do much with your facial expressions when you're Arseface. His eyes do a little bit, but I mean, just his body language, he's really, really good at like pantomiming that this guy who has every reason to be miserable at times is the only person in this whole universe we're going to visit who actually has a little bit of positivity in his spirit.
Some spectrum of hope.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this guy.
And knowing the beautiful bride that awaits him in the future, I can't wait.
I mean, I like the makeup well enough. I mean,
but in a show that pushed boundaries as much as this, I was expecting a little more disgusting look out of Arseface.
I mean, it's a fine line you got to walk here, before people will accept it and still feel like they're supposed to feel about the character, but without vomiting on themselves.
They could have had more drool. They could have had more drool and goobers. They could at least do that.
But you can go much further in a book because it's a quick one shot thing. But when you're seeing that thing 30 frames a second and it real true tone and everything, it could creep people out to a point where they're just like, I don't care how nice he is, he looks fucked up and I don't like it.
Plus, the three of us in New York are talking after the preview that we saw. And it's Adam, my girlfriend, and myself. Adam has a pretty good relationship with the book. Preacher is my favorite comic book of all time. I think I've stated that before. And my girlfriend has never read a lick of it. And as a matter of fact, isn't even that big of a superhero fan. So when I was very interested to see what she had to say about the show. She cannot wait to watch the rest of this show. She loves it that much. And I'm wondering if that is who they're going for with this series. That, yes, we have all of these things for all of the fanboys and the people like myself and Bruce. And Matt, I don't know how deep you were into the books, but
I've
pretty darn deep.
Many times.
Yeah, pretty darn deep.
Garth Ennis is my favorite comic book writer.
Oh,
period.
Wow.
Yeah, him and Warren Ellis are tops for me. So a lot of Ennis in one library. Yes.
So you're in the bag. So
yes.
So I'm wondering.
You're a messed up individual, is what you're saying.
Plus,
I get the shakes if I go too long.
Something I didn't consider too is if they go as grotesque with Arseface as I would have liked them to, then they start to tread in that territory where you're kind of punching down and you're laughing at him and not with him. So maybe they did want to use a little bit of reservation there with it.
I think you got to look at that character and you have to feel sad for him too. But you can kind of be a little bit grossed out, but you can't be super grossed out. You have to feel more empathy.
Well, and I do wonder if they're going to do the flashback and show it happening, and then that go really gruesome.
Curious.
And there's parts when you watch something so well. I watch Preacher. I watch some of the movies that we watch, and I know the source material so well that it'll bug me a little bit when I know some of the changes and they don't suit me. But all of a sudden, I'm really, really curious. I want to hear what Arseface's backstory is in this universe because of the timeline that they've said it can't be what it was in the comics. So I'm really curious what they're going to come up with for it.
Yeah, is it going to be a different pop star?
I think they're going to go in a different direction altogether. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I think he's still going to be.
I'm willing to bet that some of his father being overbearing probably plays into it a little bit.
I think it'll be that he's bullied and feels inadequate and just tries to commit suicide. I think they'll stay away from the Kurt Cobain angle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big highlight of the show, I can't believe we haven't talked about it yet. But man,
let's do it.
When it comes to the music in this show, how about that lady shredding Amazing Grace on the electric guitar in church?
That's the highlight of the show.
Here's the thing, man.
That's my new ringtone.
If you've had any time in church, you've been to something that is like that. To where
also,
if
you've lived in a small town, you've been to somewhere that girl or guy has been doing a really crappy job.
You know
of monotonously covering something.
What I saw, we already heard the references to the new mega church. We'll just give it some random name like Elevation or something. But anyway, they were talking about the new mega church coming to town and how it had a Starbucks. And you know, those churches always have like the contemporary Christian rock bands up on the stage behind the preacher. And I thought this was the best that Anvil could do to compete with that. That's the story in my mind that they didn't have to tell me. I figured it out. Like that other church, they got a guy on the drums and electric guitar player. Well, we got Sue Ellen, and she's got 5 strings that still work on hers.
Yeah,
They're all mostly tuned.
But yeah, the church where my grandfather had his funeral banned string instruments because they wanted somebody to play a particular song at his funeral, and string instruments weren't allowed. Only the old pipe organ, and I don't think they were talking about the thing with the keys when he said it.
So, like, you couldn't even, like, literally no piano?
I guess, man, it was a missionary Southern Baptist church with like 7 members. I mean, it was small.
7 members?
Give or take 3.
That's more like at Donnie's house.
there were 10 on Christmas, and then 4 the rest of the year.
Yeah,
it's fair weather people coming in here only for the high holidays. I'm talking to you, Chuck.
So anytime I would see or hear about like anything that was close to contemporary music in a church, it always seemed weird to me. So that's why maybe that stuck out to me in a different way than it did to others. But I pictured that they're trying to compete with the Rockin' the Cross services for the young adults that they have at the mega church with the Starbucks.
Swing and a miss.
Because they'd already hinted at, well, we can't have a barista. At least somebody that knows how to use a frother could be in the lobby, you know? Another big question. You know, we've been running through some questions. We're getting to the end. There's a couple I want to get out there. Number 1, during this season, will Sheriff Root ever sodomize himself?
Oh, wow.
I'm going to probably say they'll stray away from that.
The character seems to be different, you know.
Well, as of right now, once there are dead parishioners, if they go that route,
right,
he knows what it's going to be, right?
And you know, in essence, the same story point happened with the guy and his mom. You know, he goes down to Sarasota, Florida, and cuts his heart out. I mean, the lesson that Jesse learned from the sodomizing of Sheriff Root is that people will follow your instructions literally, and they could end up dead. You know, that was kind of the first time that he'd had that happen. So for character development,
while we did our first episode and everything, it was like, man, with these guys behind the helm, anything could happen with the voice of God happening down to where it could lead to very funny things.
Yeah.
Also, but I would love to see that happen because I want to see Arseface disappear, come back again midway through season 2 or 3 as the vigilante motorcycle guy, you know, with the helmet on. I really want to see that. Also, do you think God will ever bite Jesse's eyeball out in this series that we're watching? Because the eye patch, man, seems like too hard to pass up for the visual it would give us on the screen.
I think eventually we'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, I look at what Walking Dead is doing and how, like, you know, that show is going on and become what it's become. And you know, this is, you know, not quite the. I mean, I guess what's the total issue number on for Preacher versus
66 plus special
66
issues
versus, you know, you're up in the hundreds there with the, you know, the Walking Dead stuff. So you don't have quite the breadth of everything there, but you know, you've got a lot of material to work with. So I think,
and a lot that is kind of run right through in the Preacher comic book. Honestly, like
they move quick.
There is
in that
room
comic.
for breathing.
They move quick. They also dive into backstories in the comics, and that's always something they could do here if they needed to for a bottle episode or something.
Well, I'll tell you, that whole standalone issue about the Saint of All Killers is
it's a 4-issue miniseries.
I mean, that's like ripe for just like a half season arc. I think.
And I love the way
I would not mind that at all.
Oh man, I also love the way that it's framed, where it has nothing to do with the story. There's like a mob hitman talking to his grandpa or his uncle that makes meatball sandwiches now, but he also was once a hitman, and tells him the story of the Saint of Killers. I like the way it's framed, and it would be real easy for them to do as a special something or other. Mm-hmm. Like a Christmas special, man. What raises your spirits like that story?
We need to get the British style going here.
The Saint of Killers Christmas special. What did you guys think? What did you guys think of Sheriff Root, man? Because the character was drawn in the comics to look like an elderly Jimmy Stewart. But they've decided in the TV show to cast somebody that kind of looks like that fat guy that was in all the Ernest movies. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Well, except they cast like a real badass, man. Like, so W. Earl Brown is one of my favorite character actors.
Yeah.
And he shows up all over the place. Famously, he was Dan, who popped the guy's eye out on Deadwood.
Okay.
In the knockdown, drag out fight in the street, right? But he's been all over the place. Kind of any TV series you can think of. He's the guy in the very first episode of Bates Motel that Vera Farmiga murders, right? That Norma Bates kills to set off all of the problems. He's on just tons of stuff. He's great. I'm really happy to see him in this role.
In this first episode, rather, though the vibe I'm getting is a little more like Roscoe P. Coltrane, a little more Buford T. Justice, where he's just kind of corrupt and obstructionist, but he doesn't seem like the danger. He doesn't seem to represent the hate and the violence that he does.
I totally disagree with you.
Yeah, I think he's there.
Okay.
I think it's in there. It just hasn't come to the surface yet.
I look forward to seeing it.
I think you get a little bit of that burn behind his eyes when he tells Jesse to stop, or it's enough in the bar.
Okay, you make a good point.
And I hope we're going to see some repercussions of that, because that will set up that character in just that way.
Now, we've run through it pretty well. Any negatives? Any just to try to be fair and balanced here, if I can borrow a phrase from Adam's favorite news source. But any negatives here? Any stuff you were disappointed in? Because this podcast is going to be mostly showering of love on this show. But I think it's good to stay
just
grounded.
A broad discussion of the show.
In
general.
But, the only real negative I could come up with was what we just talked about with Sheriff Root. But I didn't know if either of you guys had anything to add.
I don't. I think it's a little too early for me to tell what I have questions about, if they're going to be a negative or not. And I have to say, off of the one episode, I don't have anything really big. Other than, right, like I wish they had kept a little more of, or gone into a little more of the celestial stuff, and hopefully they'll do that in the future, right? The factions of angels that are freaking out about this stuff.
I want this first season to be very successful, so they can get a little bit more budget, so they can go on the road and take us to Angelville and Louisiana and New Orleans, and take us to heaven, take us to France, to Masada. I want them to get a little bit of budget so they can start getting crazy. So I'm really, really hoping that this does well in these first 10 episodes.
It wouldn't surprise me at all that the end of the 10th episode is them going on the road.
My prediction is that the kind of finale of this first 10 episodes is going to be Jody and TC showing up. No, seriously, because they show up, and that's when he has to go on the road. They kidnap him, take him back to Angelville. And,
that's right.
I think Tulip will get shot probably as a mid-season cliffhanger. They're going to try to pull the whole she's dead, but everybody's going to have it spoiled. Or maybe they shoot somebody else. They do the whole Glenn Walking Dead thing with Negan that's going on right now. But I do think Jody and TC show up at the end, and that gives us the opportunity, if they have the budget for season 2, then they drag him back to Grandmama and Angelville, and we get a whole lot of backstory on Jesse. And then if they don't get the budget, then they can have season 2 start off with Jody and TC being chased off. It gives them a good fulcrum.
But I mean, I like overall what they're doing with this show, and I think that they're very smart to kind of follow that Walking Dead format, where it's just like, hey, it's going to be the same, but it's also going to be very different and stuff. And I think that does great for the people that are like, hey, you guys that love this stuff, here's all the great little nuggets for you. But for you new cats and stuff, you don't have all this baggage to work through and really trying to overcome, because it's going to be tough. And but I mean, I like to see where things are going. I like the flashback with his dad and stuff, very kind of Dexter-y in a way, where my guess is we're gonna get
good.
Well, it did not end up the best that way. You're not wrong, but just to give you kind of that backstory and a little bit, and show those little flashbacks throughout the thing and give us that full story eventually. So I'm kind of dig that idea too. But I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, next episode, because he's credited with 9 of them, we're definitely going to get Odin Quincannon.
Oh, very nice.
And they've set him up real nicely. We've already seen the meat packing. He owned the cow that Cassidy ate.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, so Jackie Earl Haley will show up as him.
My man
Riding up on his little dirt bike, smoking a cigarette, telling everybody what's what.
That guy's real cool. Looks like he hasn't taken a shower in about 3 months.
Well,
real cool.
Adam, do we want to roll Sean into his prepared statement?
Yeah, I forget how we were doing this.
We'll just leave it. We'll leave it open ended. Sean, do you have a prepared statement?
Okay. Yeah. All right. My bad. All right. So I'm used to the other show like that. With this, we're already in a different beast. So for those of you who don't know, this is Preacher Podcast. Here's an offshoot of our other show here, Movie Podcast. And usually on that show, our friend Sean here has a prepared statement. And I believe he has one for this particular episode.
That's right, Adam. And I do, in fact, have a prepared statement.
Oh, well, thank you.
Please hold your comments till the end. Tonight, I have to bridge the gap between bits of two different podcasts because the Stallone connection is specific to the Hero Movie Podcast, while a brand new bit we're calling The Shameful Paycheck is specific to the Preacher Pod. Some would use words like Herculean and hero to describe such an exercise, but I like to think of myself more as a yeoman, doing good, extraordinary work while keeping a low profile, so I might seem like everyone else, but if anyone were to do any sort of digging, they could see that clearly I'm not. So for today's Stallone connection / shameful paycheck, let's start by talking about Steadicam operators. In my experience, all Steadicam operators are the same. They behave like not only would the production shut down without their involvement, but so would the government and possibly the laws of physics. They believe they're a type of magician, and stupid normies like you and I couldn't possibly understand the complexities involved with Steadicam operation. The Steadicam operator for Preacher is Cedric Martin, and while I've never worked with him, if I did, he would have to work pretty hard to gain my trust, sort of like anyone who owns more than 2 cats. Turns out old Cedric Martin has worked a lot over the past few years, including stints on TV shows like United States of Terror and Low Winter Sun, while also working on movies like A Single Man and Night Moves, where I'm sure he's uttered the phrase, "That's very sensitive equipment. Make sure you're careful around it," more than once. And while Cedric Martin's life is one filled with shopping online for North Face and Patagonia gear on his phone while driving his Audi 5, his life would get a little bit better when he worked on the 2009 Bollywood romantic comedy Kambak Ishq, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. We've talked about that movie before on Hero Movie Podcast, but not on the Preacher Pod. So for those of you new to our chicanery, Kambak Ishq is a romantic comedy about an Indian stuntman that takes Hollywood by storm but cannot find true love. And if you're wondering if I've seen it, I haven't. Because it's a romantic comedy about an Indian stuntman that takes Hollywood by storm but cannot find true love. Top billing for Kambak Ishq is none other than the only man whose seed has no need of an egg to gestate, Sylvester Stallone. The best part is that Stallone is in it for roughly 12 seconds, and yet he gets top billing because he's Sylvester Stallone, and he's bigger than all of us. Are you paying attention? Because if you're paying attention, looks like we just made ourselves a Stallone connection. But what has Cedric Martin done for a shameful paycheck? What project has he worked on that we can all laugh at? Well, there's a bit to choose from here, since he worked on the documentary Wonder Woman Legend of Myth that for some reason interviews Hugh Hefner. Or Vacancy 2, a movie that couldn't bring back Frank Whaley because of salary issues. Vacancy 2 did not have enough money to pay for Frank Whaley, everybody.
I love that guy.
Me too. However, far and away the project I will bring up to him if he ever tries to pull any of that I am the magic Steadicam operator crap on me will be 2006's The Da Vinci Treasure, which was a knockoff of the terrible Tom Hanks movie, The Da Vinci Code.
One of the best haircuts in Hollywood in that movie.
And I did ask for your to please hold it till the end. I did ask. I know I did. And while the two may have fairly similar titles, There's no mistaking the two movies for each other within watching the first minute of them. There's also no mistaking the only reason why you take that movie is to pay your power bill. Oddly, this horrible knockoff stars both C. Thomas Howell and Lance Hendrickson. But do not let that fool you, dear readers, because it's awful. Just listen to this user review I stole from IMDb from a user who calls himself J to the Doves. And it's titled, Only God Knows Why. J to the Doves says, why was this movie made? It's the worst copy film I've ever seen. It's so stupid and bad. I can't believe there's a recognizable actor in this movie, Lance Hendrickson from the Alien movies. It is so terrible and stupid, and the editing tricks used are so pointless and dumb and distracting. I hate this movie. The making of footage was pretty much C. Thomas Howell being an ass to everyone on set. Avoid this movie at all costs. Well, Jay to the Doves, thank you for working in the trenches. I have no intention of ever watching the Da Vinci Treasure, but I really, really, really want to see C. Thomas Howell in a documentary acting like a massive toolbox on set. And I would never have known about this gift from heaven without your tireless efforts, Jay to the Doves. Now, Soul Man, least famous person from The Outsiders, and weird cameo appearance in Amazing Spider-Man. Let's review this Preacher pilot so Adam can get back to listening to the other Preacher-themed podcasts and shake violently with impotent rage.
Listen, we talked about giving people insights into my life.
We talked about this.
Hey, God bless everybody. There can't be too much Preacher in the world.
That's true. That is true. So let's kind of go around. Bruce, do you have any any just kind of final thoughts, any memories, anything that you like
favorite
the most
moments?
that you
Yeah,
like?
we were going to pull
favorite
out
moments.
our favorite moments and or quotes from the show, and this one just really sat well with me. It says, "You wouldn't want to lose that wife-beating, squirrel-killing redneck vote. I imagine that's a key demographic for you."
That killed it.
Yeah, I laughed my ass off sitting at my table watching it on my computer. So that line works.
Good stuff. Sean, what you got?
You know, I really like the opening from space. I love the sign outside the church. They murder Tom Cruise, but by far, it's that bar fight with Jesse. And I know that Cassidy's getting all the play, the airplane fight, but there is something so satisfying about the slow down pan to his face when he smiles, where you're like, oh, this is the show.
Yeah.
This is actually what the show is. And that is by far my favorite scene in this episode.
Oh, great. Matt, what you got?
My favorite moment in this episode is just the shot when we come back to Cassidy after he's landed. And it's just guts everywhere, legs sort of splayed and sploshed open. It's a great gorehound shot. And as somebody who goes way in on this grindhouse crap, this sleaze, right? That shot made my day. I was like, holy crap, I'm seeing this. It's on like a major cable network. I don't have to be in like a theater that smells like pee. This is great.
Why watch it in a theater that smells like pee when you can be in your living room that smells like pee?
right.
I gotta get the feeling here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Live right.
I can just be very comfortable in my adult diaper watching this in my own room.
Adam sat next to that guy once.
Well, I mean, we've sat next to each other at movies multiple times. But that's probably like my favorite moment. And then when he just like lures the cow in and just snatches him right up and eats him to repair himself. That is, I was so glad seeing that type of thing make its way into the very first episode. It was very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go for the obvious. I mean, it is the plane fight sequence and everything, and it really is just showing that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg have really kind of they've come into their own and stuff. This is not like their first outing as directors or anything. These are guys who have a swift hand. They know what they're doing and have paid attention to the sets that they've been on and everything, man. And I think it really shows there, because that is something that in television can look crappy and just real, just slapdash put together and everything. But you could put that up on the big screen, of which Sean and I saw it on, and guess what? Still works.
Yep.
And I was very impressed by that. And I'm like, and the whole vibe of everything within the show itself, I really hope that and it, by all rights it should continue over to all the other episodes as well, because a lot of times with shows and stuff, the first people out that are directing it, they're really setting the tone for everything. This is how this show is going to work, and it's. I think they've set a great bar for all the other directors within this season to follow after, and I think it's quite commendable.
And they're showing an encore this weekend. Are you guys going to watch it?
I mean, I got it recorded on the DVR. What do I got to do?
I don't have cable.
You're going to watch the Preaching Dead or whatever that show after it is?
Talking Preacher.
That's it. Preaching Dead would have been cool, too. Just put them all together.
Preaching Dead would be almost as accurate.
True. But yeah, so we'll be talking about stuff. So we said that there's not a show next week for some odd reason. Does anyone know?
Memorial Day weekend.
It's got to be
There you go.
Walking Dead has set the long tradition of treating Sundays like a Saturday on 3-day weekends.
Sunday, Saturday with a 3-day, 4-day weekend and night. I don't know.
Plus, the reason they do that marathon is because no one watches TV on Sunday night on Memorial Day weekend.
There you go.
It just never happens because everybody's off work Monday.
Not everybody, but so.
Well, but you are not the demographic with money and middle class that the advertisers are.
This much is fair.
That's true. I do have Monday off.
Well, I'm almost not middle class anymore.
All right. But yeah, man, so we'll be coming back week after next to give you episode 2 and all that kind of stuff. So, guys, thank you for listening. Head on down to the iTunes, drop us a 5-star review, help us kind of get up there. We are in the kind of top podcast as this podcast is being recorded right now, and we appreciate you guys downloading it and, of course, reviewing. That just helps us get more eyeballs on it, and hopefully you enjoy the show, man.
The number one Preacher podcast on iTunes.
This much is true.
At the time of this recording.
At the time of this recording.
So Adam, you do other things online as well, yes?
Yeah, so you can always follow my other show, the Film Find, at thefilmfind.com. There we review new release films every single week. Check that out. Matt is my co-host on that. Matt, we have a fun time, right?
I think it's great. That show, very not safe for work.
Yeah, don't play that one in front of the kids and everything.
This one, I feel like we had a nice balance of just a couple of asses and things.
Yeah,
it's going off the rails by the end of the season.
Yeah, well,
it's going to be it's going to be bedlam, I'm sure.
But the Film Find is pretty squarely that word probably is in a part of the dictionary my kids shouldn't read.
That's true.
Kind of show.
Mm-hmm. But so, yeah, for new release reviews, go there every week and everything. And Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet, sir?
ChubbyWizard.com, man. Chubby Wizard. It's fat. It's magical. It's your portal to portly prestidigitation. We talk about comic books and comic book TV. Oh, and there's Heroes and Villains. And I have this show that I really like with a couple of lesser co-hosts called Hero Movie Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that one sounds fantastic.
It is. I think there's a guy on here that could tell me all about that show. Sean, what do you got?
Well, I am on a podcast called Hero Movie Podcast. Also, you can reach me. You can also reach me at on Twitter at Hero Movie Sean. And I have a YouTube channel called Angry Gay Spider-Man. Please check those things out.
That is it, everybody. So thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for reviewing us on iTunes and everything. See you back here in 2 weeks when we talk about episode 2 of Preacher Podcast. And so just remember, you guys, you got to be one of the good guys because there's always too many of the bad.
Hey, Mr. McCodlow, you were wrong about me, motherfucker.
Amen.